In the first free practice session for the 10th round of the 2024 Formula One Championship, Ferrari had to work a lot on different fronts. This time, we saw an SF-24 single-seater with a balance still far from optimal, whereas we were used to seeing a Ferrari that was able to hit the track with an almost perfect setup. First of all, we must specify that the two cars had different aerodynamic configurations in FP1 regarding the floor. Both, however, mounted the new medium-high load rear wing, which should also optimize efficiency. Carlos Sainz was able to use the new floor specification, modified in the initial portion and with several updates in the diffuser volume. We should keep this aspect in mind as the differences were noticeable, not only in terms of lap times. Charles Leclerc, as soon as he hit the asphalt of the 4.657-kilometer Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya with the hard tires, suffered several problems with the rear. The rear end was too light in many points of the track, especially from mid-corner onwards. On the hard tire, the Monegasque did more laps to try to make the base setup work, varying the settings of several switches. Ferrari worked on the entry differential, a parameter capable of correcting stability if set correctly. Additionally, the incidence of the front wing was varied, initially with +2 clicks and then lowered by 1 level. However, all these changes did not make a significant difference, and Charles Leclerc had to return to the pits to change the setup of his SF-24. The technicians mainly worked on the rear, trying to move the balance backward and provide more grip to the second axle tires. Carlos Sainz also suffered a certain degree of oversteer, but he managed to contain it more, so much so that he reported on the radio that the balance was shifting more towards understeer. For the second free practice session, Ferrari conducted further setup studies and the situation improved considerably. However, there were differences in stability between the two cars. Even with the red tire, we noticed some rear instability for the Monegasque driver. Carlos Sainz, on the other hand, appeared more balanced in every circumstance, according to the onboard footage. It was not a very smooth and entirely positive day for Red Bull either. The Austrian team also suffered from oversteer in the middle of the corner, a characteristic also due to the conditions of the Catalan track. Each team tried to contain this behavior of their car in their own way, with varying degrees of success. Between the first and second free practice sessions, the Milton Keynes team worked on the front end, as happened at the Imola circuit, with the aim indirectly of shifting the balance towards the rear, as Ferrari did. It is no coincidence that the aerodynamic configuration mounted on the RB20 features a rear wing that is relatively more loaded than direct competitors. Examining a comparison of the Red Bull specification with the new rear wing of the Ferrari SF-24, we can observe how the leading edge is more pronounced and in general has a larger frontal area. A Red Bull has been experiencing some balance problems between the front and rear, especially in the last month between entry and cornering. However, in the end, the expert technicians of the Formula One World Champion team always manage to find a compromise. Generally, the RB20 single-seater tends to carry less speed between the entrance and the apex, with a good front end. But at certain speeds, it does not have the same stability as the SF-24. Then, on the exit, they do not have major problems, but on entry, the load transfer puts the rear in difficulty. They should find handling that is more understeer-oriented in the approach to the apex. Similar problems were also experienced by McLaren in the first free practice session. The Woking team, however, showed a very competitive car. Lando Norris complained of oversteer in the medium-speed corners, where an F1 car needs to find a good aeromechanical compromise. This is the worst condition, as it is the most unstable. In corner entry, you want to have a certain degree of understeer to generate stability. The situation, however, improved in the second practice. On the straights, Red Bull still dominates, even with a highly loaded wing, thanks to high efficiency allowing for high end of straight speed values. In braking, as expected, the SF-24 is always the best. This makes the all-red Formula One car very stable in the entry phases. The two Ferrari drivers approach the first chicane differently due to their distinct driving styles. Balancing the performance on the track, the performance levels out quite well, maintaining the gaps they had up to the first braking point. The Ferrari SF-24 cars gain over a tenth from the middle of turn 3 to the end of the first sector. In this section of the Montmello track, the prancing horse cars can produce a lot of downforce, exactly as expected. The SF-24 is very effective in wide radius and supportive corners. In turn 4, Ferrari continues to dominate and is effective throughout the exit phase. In this area, Carlos Sainz makes a difference over his Maranello teammate, who struggles with some instability in the middle of the corner, seen by a steering wheel slightly forced to open the racing line. At the braking of Turn 5, Ferrari is again the best, but we must be careful. It was discussed a lot on the radio. The drivers tend to rely too much on the solidity of the front end and bring too much speed towards the apex of the corner. Here, Red Bull loses a lot from the exit to the next chicane. In these meters, Max Verstappen loses practically everything. In Turn 9, Ferrari has similar handling to the RB20 car. In fast corners like this one, it is crucial to carry a lot of speed in the middle of the corner without worrying too much about the exit, letting the car run. The best in this section is Mercedes, which has 5 km per hour more than Ferrari and is kilometers per hour faster compared to Red Bull and McLaren. We then arrive at Turn 10, a big braking point that has put everyone in serious difficulty. Finding a suitable line is not easy at all. After braking in acceleration, you have to attack the curb of Turn 11 to widen the entry racing line towards Turn 12. At this point, Red Bull loses a tenth, while other F1 cars tend to the same times. Mercedes requires a lot at the entrance but then loses at the exit. The different strategies, however, as mentioned, are more or less equivalent. The strategy at Turn 10 matters for the passage through Turns 11, 12, where the best car is McLaren. Red Bull has good potential in the exit phase of Turn 12, where it has more understeer that tends to straighten the car. At this point, Ferrari loses to Mercedes and no longer recovers in the final sector. It's a problem related to tire temperatures, but as understood, there was little to be done. It's a headache for everyone and also involves choices on how to build the qualifying lap. The important thing is not to produce excessive sliding that is harmful to tire management in the race. In conclusion, we can say that the new floor and rear wing mounted on Carlos Sainz's Ferrari worked properly, providing the desired surplus of stability at medium-low speeds. Additionally, the rear wing seems to work well as it provides good downforce and a bit more efficiency. At the first braking point, Ferrari arrives at 324 km per hour, while Red Bull at 327 km per hour, creating a negative gap of 3 km per hour for the red car. However, the SF-24 was the second strongest on the straights, as McLaren did not exceed a maximum speed of 320.9 km per hour. At the braking point of Turn 10, the gap reduces to just 1 km per hour. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz will therefore get their hands on Ferrari upgrades for the first time since Imola, as their battle in the Constructors' Championship moves to the Formula 1 2024 Spanish Grand Prix. In a bid to continue challenging Red Bull and McLaren at the front and keep Mercedes behind them, the Scuderia are wasting no time in bringing their second major upgrade of the season. They will not be the only team looking for a pace improvement in Barcelona, though, with Red Bull bringing 5 new updates of their own. McLaren and Mercedes have opted against doing so in Barcelona, but both teams are expected to announce upgrades before the summer break.